In August 2019, an idea surfaced that seemed to belong more to the 19th century than the 21st. When then-President Donald Trump mentioned buying Greenland, the world laughed. It was a baffling proposition, seemingly out of left field, and the public reaction was one of widespread disbelief and amusement. Late-night shows mocked it relentlessly. The story became a punchline, a perfect symbol of a surreal political era. Social media feeds were flooded with memes depicting a Trump Tower rising from the Greenlandic ice sheet. Headlines dismissed it as a whimsical fantasy, a diplomatic folly. The Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, was unequivocal, calling the discussion absurd and stating firmly that Greenland was not for sale. Greenland's own government echoed the sentiment, making it clear their home was not a piece of real estate to be traded. For most observers, the story ended there, a strange, forgotten footnote. But behind the closed doors of foreign ministries and military planning rooms, governments did not laugh. In the quiet corridors of power in Washington, Copenhagen, Moscow, and Beijing, the comment was received not as a joke, but as a clear and deliberate message. Because Greenland was never a joke, it was a signal. A signal that the United States was reawakening to the strategic importance of the High North. For decades, the Arctic was a frozen, forgotten frontier in the public consciousness. But climate change is redrawing the map of the world. As the ice melts, new shipping lanes like the Northern Sea Route and the Northwest Passage are opening, promising to slash global transit times. Beneath the ice, a treasure trove of rare earth minerals and hydrocarbons, essential for modern technology, is becoming more accessible. This confluence of new sea routes and untapped resources has turned the Arctic from a desolate wasteland into a theater of intense geopolitical competition. And behind that single strange moment sat a quiet power struggle involving the United States, Denmark, NATO, and a resurgent Russia, with China watching intently from the sidelines. This wasn't about buying a country, it was about securing influence over the future of the planet's last frontier. This is the story behind the comment nobody took seriously. It's a story of geography, power, and the immense strategic value hidden in plain sight on a massive island of ice at the top of the world. Trump, Greenland, Russia, the deal nobody explained. Greenland looks empty on a map. Ice, snow, distance. But geography decides power. Greenland sits between North America and Europe. It controls Arctic air routes. It overlooks submarine corridors. It anchors missile detection systems. In modern warfare, location beats size. And Greenland sits at the center of the Arctic. As ice melts, access opens. Shipping routes shorten. Military movement increases. Long before Trump spoke, the United States was present. Thule Air Base in northwest Greenland hosts one of America's most critical early warning radar systems. It monitors missile launches, tracks space objects. It anchors Arctic defense. This base exists because of Greenland. The U.S. does not need ownership to exert influence, but influence becomes fragile when rivals move closer, and rivals were moving. Russia views the Arctic as survival territory. Its northern coast stretches thousands of miles. Its submarines operate beneath Arctic ice. Its military bases reopened after decades of closure. Russia rebuilt airfields, installed radar systems, deployed missile units. Not quietly, not secretly. This was public policy. The Arctic became a chessboard, and Greenland sat near the center. To understand the complex geopolitics of the Arctic, one must first understand Greenland's unique position on the world stage. At first glance, its status seems straightforward, but the reality is a delicate balance of power, history, and ambition. Greenland is not an independent nation. It is an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark, a relationship formalized and evolved over centuries. Since the Self-Government Act of 2009, Greenland has gained significant control over its own destiny, but it remains intrinsically tied to Copenhagen. This arrangement creates a clear, yet often contentious, division of responsibilities. Denmark retains control over foreign policy, defense, and monetary policy. It represents Greenland in international bodies like NATO and manages the security apparatus that protects the island, including the critical Thule Air Base. In return, Greenland's government in Nuuk controls almost all domestic affairs. This includes education, healthcare, and most importantly, the rights to its vast, untapped natural resources. A treasure trove of rare earth minerals, uranium, and hydrocarbons buried beneath the ice. And it is here, at the intersection of domestic resources and foreign policy, that a quiet tension brews. Greenland, aspiring for greater economic self-sufficiency and eventual independence, desperately needs foreign investment to develop its mineral wealth. Denmark, responsible for security, wants stability and is wary of foreign powers, particularly China and Russia, gaining a strategic foothold through economic deals. Meanwhile, the United States, Denmark's NATO ally, prioritizes its own security interests, viewing Greenland as an unsinkable aircraft carrier in the high north. For decades, these competing interests simmered beneath the surface. Then, in 2019, President Trump's audacious, off-the-cuff comment about purchasing the island forced this delicate tension into the harsh light of day. Denmark's reaction was swift and unequivocal. The Prime Minister dismissed the idea as absurd, a firm rejection rooted in post-colonial principle and diplomatic decorum. For Copenhagen, the conversation was a non-starter, but Greenland's response was subtly and significantly different. The Greenlandic government echoed that the island was not for sale, a point of national pride. But crucially, they added a caveat. Greenland was, in their words, open for business. They welcomed partnerships and investment. In that small but profound difference lay the entire story. It was a clear signal to the world that while Greenland's land was not on the market, its strategic and economic leverage most certainly was. When President Trump publicly floated the idea of buying Greenland in 2019, the notion was met with a mix of disbelief and ridicule. But Trump did not invent the idea. The United States had tried to purchase the island before, first in 1867 and again under President Harry Truman in 1946, who offered Denmark $100 million in gold. For over a century, the strategic value of Greenland was a quiet consensus in the corridors of American power, a topic reserved for classified memos and closed-door diplomatic discussions. American officials discussed Greenland's importance for decades, primarily through the lens of military geography. During the Cold War, it was seen as an unsinkable aircraft carrier in the North Atlantic, a critical post for monitoring Soviet submarine and bomber activity. The establishment of Thule Air Base in 1951 cemented this role, making it the U.S. military's northernmost installation and a key node in its ballistic missile early warning system. This strategic posture was a constant, a silent understanding between Washington and Copenhagen. What Trump did differently was say the quiet part out loud. He took a subject confined to the discrete world of statecraft and thrust it onto the global stage. In politics, saying things out loud changes the board. It shatters ambiguity and forces every player to show their hand. The Danish government, which oversees Greenland's foreign and defense policy, was compelled to issue a firm public refusal, calling the suggestion absurd. The people of Greenland, who have their own autonomous government, were reminded that their future was being discussed by others. The statement sent ripples through the Western alliance. It forced NATO allies to confront a long-neglected topic, a coherent Arctic strategy. For years, the region was treated as an afterthought, a zone of low tension. Trump's bluntness, however clumsy, highlighted the changing realities. It reminded Russia, which had been quietly and methodically expanding its military footprint across the Arctic, that the US was watching. Moscow's reopening of Soviet-era bases and deployment of advanced air defense systems had gone largely unanswered. Now, the game had changed. Most importantly, the public declaration reframed Greenland as a strategic asset for the 21st century. Its value was no longer just about military positioning. It was about climate change opening new sea routes and the vast, untapped reserves of rare earth minerals critical for modern technology lying beneath the melting ice. The offer wasn't about acquiring territory. It was about asserting influence. It was a move to secure access and deny it to rivals. Not land, leverage. And once leverage is made visible on the world stage, the comfortable silence of the past disappears forever. The Arctic was no longer a frozen periphery. It was now a central arena in a new era of great power competition. There was no secret purchase agreement, no hidden transfer. The real deal was positioning. Military access, economic influence, diplomatic pressure. Greenland became a message to Russia, to NATO, to Europe. The Arctic was no longer quiet. Trump's words sounded reckless, but power politics rarely announced themselves politely. Greenland was never about ownership. It was about who controls the future Arctic, and the ice is still melting. What comes next will not be laughed at.